Cameron, what was your reading from the Fed commentary and the kind of excitement it's instilled across world markets?
I, I was a little bit surprised. I was expecting them to sort of play a very straight bat in cricketing terms going into the holiday. They've been very careful not to let market optimism run away with itself and set the stage for having to keep rates even higher for longer. The market reaction was in keeping with what we've seen this year. I mean, the Fed may have been in a tightening bias for a while, but the markets have certainly been in an optimism bias. And most of the major narratives until the Fed really kind of shut them down in the third quarter were this year being pretty optimistic that China would rebound, that the Fed would pivot. Markets are looking for reasons to move higher, and today's meeting seems to have given them that. Though I would caution that there seems to be a pattern too of an optimistic response followed by a slightly more cautious follow-up as people parse the fine print and take a slightly harder-headed look at what the Fed is trying to convey.
Cameron, a peak in US interest rates has always coincided with a weakness in dollar and more flows into emerging markets. Do you think the historical template will play out again?
I think there's a good chance, but what we've seen from a mutual fund perspective this year has been a very heavy focus on just a couple of major emerging Asian fund groups, of which dedicated India equity funds have been to the fore. But China, Taiwan, and Korea funds have also done well in terms of attracting fresh money. The rest of the emerging markets universe has really not done so well. And we're still seeing outflows more often than not from the diversified global emerging markets funds, which are sort of a bellwether for broader sentiment towards emerging markets.
Cameron, so when it comes to specifically a market like India, where there is visibility, there is reasonable amount of growth, valuations are not really stretched. This kind of in turn, do you think will augur well for 2024 allocations? Are we in for bumper allocations coming by global allocators for India starting 2024?
You're certainly heading in the right direction. We've seen allocations in the diversified fund groups go up. In terms of inflows to dedicated funds, we're still in a record-setting run of weekly inflows. So there's no doubt India's very much sort of in the eye of investors, especially those that feel they need to make some kind of allocation to emerging markets. A lot will depend, honestly, on what happens in China. If China decides that it wants to try again for a 5.5% growth target next year and actually deploys the stimulus needed, then I think some of the money will start returning to China. But we'll have to see that if that happens. The Chinese authorities have been they've stuck to their guns this year. Pursued policies aimed at not inflating bubbles and trying to make sure latent ones within the economy don't turn into really serious ones. So they've constantly disappointed on the stimulus front. And if they keep doing that, then I think India is looking at a steady increase in allocations and flows.
Okay, Cameron, just wanted to understand in detail what's the view on emerging markets. Well, of course, it's the Argentinian ETF, which has been the best performer year to date, surprisingly. But just wanted to understand where things lie when it comes to India, because while we've done really well year to date, but still got a lot of catch up to do, even with the US equity markets at an index level, or for that matter, markets like Greece, Argentina, Egypt, etc.
You used, I think, the right words, catch up. There's considerable potential for catch up, really outside, as I said, a couple of the major emerging Asian country fund groups. What's happening in Argentina doesn't surprise me at all. The one reliable indicator that I've always seen over the years in terms of an acceleration of fund flows is a credible reform story. And Milay's chainsaw is roaring. For how long, who knows? But so I certainly think that Argentina's potential reform story will sort of help focus investors on Latin America. And in fact, we've been seeing that. Emerging Europe and Africa are sort of suffering death by 1,000 cuts, ranging from geopolitics to the dependence of emerging Europe on what happens with the Eurozone and EU. So I think that the view is very Asia biased. It's still very cautious in broad terms, and it is fragmented. As I said, the EMEA universe, it really is out in the cold at the moment. Latin America is beginning to see some signs of enthusiasm, and as I said, the big beasts in emerging Asia have been doing well all year.
Cameron, great to have you on the show today. Thanks for taking the time out and joining in.